What lie were you led to believe until growing up? I can't remember how old I was, but we were driving somewhere and saw a truck carrying part of one of those prefabricated houses. I asked why the house was cut in half. My dad replied in a completely deadpan voice that the couple probably got divorced and they each got half the house. I'm going to use this in the future. That cleaning the litter box was an adult-only activity normally, but I was just so mature for my age I was allowed the honor of scooping poop. My mom was smart. My aunt and uncle told us that kids weren't allowed in Blockbuster after 8 PM because my sister and I could never decide on a movie. What made it believable was one time we saw a younger kid getting arrested outside the store. My uncle told us it was because it was after 8 PM. Took way too long for me to catch on. It took you so long it can't even happen anymore. That when my aunt went skydiving she brought me back a piece of a cloud. It was just a cotton ball pulled apart and sitting in a baggie. That Rex education would involve actually getting physically intimate in front of the rest of the class. I was bloody nervous entering those lessons. Haha, I think Monty Python may have influenced this belief. Growing up my dad told me earwigs go into your ear, but they can't turn round to get back out, so eat through your brain to come out the other ear. I was about 18 sitting with a group of friends who laughed loudly at me when I found out it wasn't true. I heard this same one growing up and was fearful of bugs. Having 3 little girls myself, I always have encouraged them to enjoy and be interested in bugs. Just last week, after a 6-week ear infection that wasn't getting better, the ent doctor found a dead beetle in my youngest daughter's ear. Very painful removal and she is now terrified of bugs. I don't blame her. That people could flush themselves down the toilet. Once when I was 4 I had annoyed my mom enough that she said, alright, I guess I'm gonna go flush myself. I ran into the bathroom after her only to find the toilet flushing and her gone. She was laughing behind the shower curtain as I cried into the toilet. I bet that scene in Harry Potter really got to you when they flush themselves into the ministry. When I was about 10 my grandfather took me fishing. Being a 10-year-old, I caught nothing but weeds. I asked him if we could cook the weeds, which he replied of course. I go back to their house and watch TV while I wait for my delicacy pond weeds. Fast forward 5 years and I am a high school freeman. One day the cafeteria served green beans. I thought they were lake weeds, so I bet my friend $10 that they were from a lake. I found out that I didn't eat pond weeds. My grandmother had thrown out the weeds and cooked a can of green beans. I also lost $10. For 5 years I thought green beans were actually pond weeds. That your elementary school actually had a detailed permanent record that would haunt you for life. When I asked my dad why Asian people had umbrellas open when it was sunny out, he told me it's because they have a terrific sense of sarcasm, and they do it for laughs. I believed that for longer than I care to admit. I grew up believing the President, Bush, called my dad every day to make sure his watch was set correctly. I told my teacher this. Facepalm. My dad also taught Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan everything they know. Sounds like my grandfather, who was born in 1935, and, according to his rendition, enlisted in World War II to punch Hitler in the face using his black belt in the ancient Chinese martial art of schmooze. I was told that girls grew hair under their boobs, like armpits. It didn't sound right, but I didn't know enough about it to dispute it. I didn't realize my grandmother was dying of ovarian cancer until she did. Everybody just told me she had a fever and I wasn't able to spot the signs like missing hair because I didn't know any better. I was 8. I was devastated. At this point, I get why my parents lied to me, but I still don't know whether they should have. It was a nasty shock. That's heartbreaking. That my mom's shoebox of weed that I found under her bed was actually potpourri that had gone bad, and yet she never threw it away. She didn't want the trash smelling like spoilt potpourri. You can trap a sound in a jar. One day, when I woke up, my pet rabbit was mysteriously taken to a farm where he has more friends. I realized years later that he must have died for some reason and wasn't brought to a farm where he is hopping around with other bunnies. Same thing happened to me. My dog Pepper is still running through fields on a farm to this day. He would be 40 years old by now. I was told that, if an ice cream truck plays its music they have run out of ice cream. so only ever got an ice cream at shows when they were parked up. B. Jumper was a swear word in that I wasn't to say it. For context, my parents heard me saying fork quickly so it sounded like a swear word. My dad said I know what you are doing, and it's okay, but I never, ever, want to hear you say jumper. They got my friend's parents' family, everyone in on it. That lasted about a year. Car battery is dead. Do you have the My dad told me that when I turned 10 the gypsies would knock on the door and take me away for a year to teach me about their way of life. I know I was unsure he was telling the truth, but he went so all in on the lie over the months preceding my 10th birthday that I absolutely shat myself every time there was a knock on the door. I'm not 100% sure it was my 10th birthday, but definitely in 2 years. I had a stuffed squirrel taxidermy on my wall when I was a kid. My dad said I could not touch it because it was toxic if I got it on my hands. I have always been very careful when I have moved it around and washed my hands real good unless I used gloves. When I was 28 I learned that he said it so I wouldn't ruin it by petting it. Still washes my hands after moving it. While he may have had a different reason for telling you it was toxic, there may have been a kernel of truth depending on the age of the specimen. Older taxidermy animals were treated with arsenic under the skin to keep bugs away. That teachers don't gossip about students. When you are an adult and see your friends become teachers, you know very well they talk about the pupils. When I went to a camp my mum agreed to take care of my hamster. Hamster was the best, cuddliest creature and enjoyed playing with me. When I came back, Hamster was a wild butthole, biting my hand. Because my mum didn't play enough with him, he went feral. Turned out he didn't go feral after all. Our family dog ate Hamster and mum replaced him with identical hamster. Pretty sure my mom just stopped wanting to buy crap for my hamster when I was like 5. So she let it go, bent the little bars in his cage, and said he escaped. I wasn't even upset. I thought the hamster was a beast. Strong as frick for a hamster if he could bend those bars. Hope he did well. Mum saw I was visiting P sites via the web history. I was pretty young. She told me the next day that it's unrealistic. That's true. And that girls don't give BJs. That moths were the ghosts of butterflies. Cheers for that one, Dad. Kind of a cool idea though. If you jerk off too much you'll go blind. This is the reason why I didn't start masturbating until I was almost 22. That if I sleep with my socks on I'll become blind. When I was but a wee lad, we helped Dad cut down trees. Big trees. He was always worried about which way they would tip, so he would pace out a length of rope, tie it to a tall branch, and have all the kids pull as hard as we could to help the tree fall in the correct direction while he worked the chainsaw. You sit on a throne of lies. He used rope so that he knew where all the kids were, and paced it out so that even if the tree fell at us, we were far enough away to not get hurt. Greatest safety lie ever, and I can't wait to lie to my kids in a similar fashion. I was quite young, 5, and my uncle was babysitting my sister and I. First lie was that they used some sort of liquid to make dirty diapers edible and that we had both been eating dirty diapers for years. Second, he told me about a great trick we were going to play where we would get my sister to go to bed early by having me run up and down the hallway with her until she became exhausted. We both laughed when our plan worked perfectly. Then, he excitedly told me I was going so fast that I should just keep going and see how many laps I could do on my own. I remember getting momentarily angry when I realized what he'd done, but I was falling asleep by then so I couldn't do anything about it. Ha 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 ha, that's brilliant. As someone who works with kids I love doing things like this to just expel a ton of their energy. Make anything a game or a competition and kids will love it. You'll understand when you're an adult. I still don't understand, Mom. That my dad one day just died. No explanation as to why or how, just gone. I was 5 at the time and I didn't find out until years later when I took it upon myself to go to the police and ask how it happened. That the ice cream van siren means they are out of ice cream. Lawful evil. Not me but a friend. He is very well endowed in the nose area. As a young child he was bullied for size of his hooter and went crying to his dad. After explaining through tears that he hated the size of his schnoz, his dad proudly stated that he had a Viking's nose and that his ancestors were proud, strong Viking and that he should be proud of his nose. Cut to 20 years later, he is talking about how his ancestors were Vikings and how great he is because of this. After taking some stick he rings his dad for a bit of backup, only to be told it was all a lie to make him feel better. I have never seen an ex-Viking look so distraught in all my life. All from an older cousin that liked fricking with me growing up. That if you make eye contact with a Mexican man in Walmart he will kidnap you. An alligator lives in my great-grandma's basement. We live in KY, no gatters here. His dong was so long he had to have help from his brothers rolling it up like a hose every time he got done peeing. My grandpa's corpse is in the attic of my aunt's house. If I swear God will know and he'll kill my parents. The basic stuff. While working on the cars or in his workshop, my dad would often initially turn the wrench the wrong way. He would look me in the eye and say sometimes you have to tighten him up a little before you can loosen him. A few years ago I said it to one of my own teenage boys while helping with his car. His response was, "Dad, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." For over 30 years I hadn't realized my dad was just covering up for the fact that he was turning the wrench the wrong way. That does legit work. Sometimes you need to break it free in either direction to be able to loosen it. My mom and aunt always told each other how handsome I was and that girls would be lining up at the door. My mom had a variation on this. Because of my blue eyes she said I'd be super popular in Southern Europe on vacations. Well, I work with quite a few Italian girls now, and I am in fact very irresistible. As a child, there was this cartoon character I enjoyed watching called Johnny Bravo. The TV show would always give this number you could call, which you'd have to pay for, so you can call the show and actually talk to Johnny Bravo through the phone. One night, my mother calls me downstairs and hands me the phone. Whose voice do I hear? Johnny Bravo. I was so ecstatic to hear his voice and talk to him and I was jumping with joy and I kept that phone call going for as long as I could. I couldn't stop thanking my mother for calling the show and letting me speak to someone I had so much love for as a kid. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm in Spain with my family. It was late and we were walking back to our hotel. Me, my family and friends of the family we went with were all talking about me, my sister and their kids when we were all very young. To involve myself in the conversation, I mention how I spoke to this cartoon character I loved. Out of nowhere, my dad admits that it was him on the other end of the phone, saying it in a way like it should have been obvious and I should have figured it out. I didn't. I was completely heartbroken and felt a pain in my chest as one of my most precious childhood memories was crushed like it was nothing within seconds. Still love Johnny Bravo though. I was completely heartbroken and felt a pain in my chest as one of my most precious childhood memories was crushed like it was nothing within seconds. I hope it will at some point transform back into a good memory, because your parents loved you and wanted to give you magic and research Johnny Bravo enough to successfully impersonate him. Your favorite toy needs really specialized batteries that none of the local stores carry. That it was illegal to turn the lights on inside the car while my parents were driving. That if I swallow chewing gum it'll stay inside me forever. Okay mum, while not the smartest idea, it does actually get digested eventually. That if I eat a black watermelon seed, then a watermelon will grow in my stomach. I still refuse to eat black watermelon seeds even though I know a watermelon won't grow in my stomach. One of my earliest memories involved me accidentally eating a watermelon seed. I usually pick them out of the watermelon, but I missed that one, and asking my parents what would happen. My dad started fake crying and said, "It was nice knowing you, mademoiselle." My mom immediately told me that my dad was lying. Thanks, mom. When I was about 4 years old my grandmother suddenly disappeared and we were spreading her ashes a week or so later. My mom told me Grammy got sick and had to go away. I never saw her crying, or didn't notice I suppose. When I was 12 years old I found out Grammy actually committed suicide. My mom told me that taking care of me was the only reason she was able to wake up in the morning. She was only 25 years old when it happened. I can't even imagine being that strong. That my gran was 21 years old. That strangers would just offer you free drugs. My mother would never let me try to fix anything around the house. She always said I would just end up making it worse. Whether it was a water leak, a toilet clog, a broken doorknob, she wouldn't even give me a chance. Foolishly, I believed her until I was almost 20. We were tight on money, so she would never hire any professionals to fix anything. Our house had so many broken things that it was absurd. There were broken locks, broken appliances, squeaky cabinetry, clogged sinks. It was awful. One day, I got fed up and decided to look into replacing a broken lock, and to my surprise they just sold door lock sets at Home Depot. I bought it and tinkered with it for several hours, and I ended up managing to replace the lock. I had no idea you could even think about messing with a lock without years of locksmith school or something. After that, I began to look into how to fix other things, and found out that most of it, while not easy, is totally within the realm of the average person to fix or replace. Last year my wife and I bought our first home, a hoarder den of your worst nightmares, gutted it to the studs and redid everything ourselves. All those years of my life, wasted thinking I couldn't do anything about home repair, and now I can put a place together almost from scratch. That adults had their crap together. I always thought as a kid big people knew what was right and wrong and were more or less good, but then as I grew older I discovered how dumb everyone freaking is. When I was about 12 or 13, the age when you really need your big sister to teach you important things, my sister just packed up and left while I was at school. She is 6 years older than me but has always been my hero and best friend. I seldomly saw her or heard from her. My mom told me she moved away and didn't want to visit us. I later found out my mom's boyfriend told my mom that my sister was a bad influence on me and my little brother and that I need a room to myself. My sister, who had helped raise us since my mom divorced my dad 5 years prior, she had gotten a job and paid bills and made sure we didn't do without. She taught us right from wrong and was an amazing influence on us. When I would call my sister to come see us shortly after, my mom would make us leave specifically so we couldn't see her. I thought my best friend hated me. She had named me and was the first to hold me, and now she hates me. I had to deal with my mom and her mentally abusive boyfriend. I had to protect my younger brother from his hatred. Then I found out all this happened because mom didn't want to stand up to her BF. My sister is still my best friend. I live a 10-minute drive from her and had an amazing weekend hanging out with her. Her kids have my heart, and while I love my mom and forgive her for a lot from my childhood, that is one lie IDK if I can ever forgive her for. I always thought my father left my mother because she was mentally ill and he couldn't deal. Turns out my grandfather basically told him to leave if he wanted to be happy. He didn't think my father would leave me, too. Now I'm sad. You have been visited by Safe Driving Doggo. You will be blessed with safe driving for 100 years, but only when you comment drive safe, Doggo. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.